Hello everybody, my name is Ben Marriott. I'm one of the consultants at T-Vision. I've been there for just over 18 months now. And today I'm going to talk to you about data and the reporting stack. But first of all, let's start off with having a look at what this isn't about. So I'm afraid it's not going to be about big data. It's an interesting subject and there's lots of good stuff happening around it, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. Similarly, I'm not going to talk about AI, and whilst AI can unlock a lot of really interesting things, it's not something that I'm going to talk about today. And this is one of the reasons why, because AI is only kind of as good as its input. And so here is an example of some of the ideas and names of paints that an AI bot came up with, and you can pick your own favourite one based on that. So I'm not going to talk about that either. But what I am going to talk about is this. So just as a brief introduction and having an agenda, then have a look at some of the questions we want to consider. What are the options that you have for reporting? And what are the benefits and what are the potential costs of that? So first of all, let's start off with thinking about some of the questions that we might need to ask ourselves before we start off on a journey of reporting. So first things first is you need to try and understand how the data's held, because like anything, it really is put good stuff in and you'll get good stuff out. Put bad stuff in and you can't make it better. You can't polish a turd. So what does Dynamics 365 Business Central data look like? And this is applicable also to NAV as well. So it's tables. And you can see each table there, payment terms, currency, finance charge terms, all very interesting. Now they're all joined in this, but they are separate. So your customers is a table that holds data about your customers. Your items hold your items. Your resources hold your resources. But there's 1,300 of them in the database. And so it's quite difficult to be able to conceptualize that and understand it. So I like to think of Business Central and NAV data as being like spaghetti. So each of those strands is one of your entities. So whether it is your items, your customers, your vendors, your resources, your sales, anything like that. So they're all separate, but they can be joined together. So bear with me on this. So first of all as well is you need to think about what do you want to get out. What everybody wants to do is you want to get your fork and you want to stick it in your plate of pasta, twirl it around, get out a mouthful, put it in your mouth, and it tastes delicious. And it all makes sense on the palate. I think what too often happens is this. You let somebody loose on your data, on your spaghetti plate, and they end up making a mess of it. Because what you need to think about is, do your users know the data? Do your sales team know how you categorize your customers? Do your sales team know how to calculate margin? Do people in your business know what the difference between markup and margin is? Well, really, do you want them to? Because this is kind of what a data estate might look like. You know, do you want them to be trying to join those bits of pasta together? But similarly, do you also want your IT team to be spending all the time fielding questions from everybody else to be creating reports for you when they've got other things that could be doing, whether it's unlocking the power and potential of some of these apps which Microsoft have looked at today? So just to start off, and we're going to have a look at some of the reporting options which there are available. So we'll start off and we'll look at Business Central reports. So when I talk about Business Central, a lot of this is very applicable to NAV as well for people who aren't quite ready or haven't made the transition yet. And what I liken Business Central reporting to is getting data, is having a single strand of spaghetti on your plate and you're sucking it up and enjoying it. So you know what you want. It's quite a defined thing and you can just get that, very directed, get it out. NAV knows what the data is. When you look at that report, I want my top customer list. Well, you get your top customer list. Okay, there's no doubt about it. It's very kind of pre-built and canned. And there's lots of different ways to be able to do that. So this is Business Central and just some ideas and some images of what reporting can look like. So it can be, you know, little graphs. It can be lists of data. But there's lots of options around within the client as to how you want to get that data out. So there's the pre-canned reports, there's dashboards, there's tiles. But there's also send to Excel. You can filter, you can get a list, you can filter it down, you can export it to Excel, you can perform a little bit of analysis on that. You've got charts. And within that, you can sort of take it offline and do a bit of, a pivot chart or something like that and get some data out, which is very flexible, but it's not as flexible as you might need, but it meets a lot of needs. And we find typically when we're implementing a new system that people who have come from something else find it quite amazing that you can do all this, what you consider to be reporting, actually directly in the system, whether it is just I want to get a customer balance out. But you can take it beyond that because of the way that now Business Central is being delivered and the opportunities that Microsoft are putting in there. And we've mentioned it a few times today, the intelligent cloud. So send your data off to Microsoft, to Azure, and it will give you some answers back. So, it's your top customer was this. You've got an overdue sales invoice amount. So you can get Cortana, you can do a bit of machine learning, a bit of AI. Yes, I said I wouldn't mention it, but we'll touch on it, to come up with some of these answers for you. And people have mentioned the intelligent edge as well. So this is where your on-premise data can actually be put into the cloud. It's still your data, it's still secured, and you can start running these services off of it to get more interesting things out of it. Or you can do it with the on-premise stuff. So you can then start to use machine learning directly within the client. So whether you're sending some stock details and sales details and get some sales forecasting or inventory forecasting back. And there's cash flow forecasting, there's image recognition, there's all these other good things that are happening. And if you look at the Microsoft roadmap for Business Central, then you can see it's all about data, it's all about intelligence, and this really is where it's all heading towards. So Business Central, NAV, gives you lots of flexibility about reporting, but it does have some limitations. So that's where we sort of take a step and we look at the next thing, which is Jett Reports. So Jett Reports, many of you have probably got it if you're existing clients, rebranded last year, became Jett Global, gave themselves a cool new logo, lots of joining up the dots and things like that. But I think for us, they've got over 14,000 companies worldwide that use Jett Reports. For us, it really is kind of an essential as part of an implementation, as part of your NAV system. And what I liken it to is putting your spoon into your alphabet spaghetti and getting out the bits that you want. It's quite directed. So, it's not kind of exploring all the data. You're building a report, but you've got the flexibility as an end user, as a client, to be able to build the report, delve into the data you want, and it can access any data in your NAV database or your Business Central database. So any table, any data, you can put joins together. It understands your NAV data as well, your Business Central data, so dimensions, option values. So rather than getting out a list of 0, 1 and 2, it'll tell you what that means. And it's really powerful. It's great for sort of doing flexible analysis, and dare I say it, the finance side of business tend to like it. Very Excel-based typically, but they've developed the product, and there's now loads of sample reports that they send with it. So there's over 70 of them. It's an Excel add-in, so you install it into Excel, and then actually you have all this great functionality. And again, they've extended it, so now you can get onto their portal. That acts as a central repository for their information, so you can refresh reports and draw down data from there and things like that. So that's all great, and that's very flexible, and it gives you lots of options. But then you get to a point where you really want to be able to just kind of explore your data and try and make sense and draw some conclusions out of having to analyse a bigger data set. And so that's where something like Jett Analytics comes in. So Jett Analytics, in my view, is really about getting your data ordered and structured. So you can see as it is up here, you've got your alpha spaghetti. It's not just a sportful now. You've created a whole dish, your beans on toast. Now, the difficulty typically is with any of these kind of reporting things, as I said, it's about getting good data out. So you need a level of expertise with that. There is a technical hurdle or a technical requirement now to be able to get the data out. And sometimes that can be difficult. And so what Jett Analytics does is it really simplifies the extraction of that data out into a data warehouse, and it's aware of Business Central and aware of NAV. So again, you get things like dimensions, you get all the good things that are in there. And it helps you as well to be able to put that together in kind of like a logical way and document it as well. So it's, you know, I think Bryony talked earlier about kind of a codeless platform with Power Apps, and Jett Analytics is a largely codeless platform, but it can also be extended with that, you know, putting in code to be able to get that data out. So if you want to be able to do that, it makes it a lot easier for end users to be able to do it. And in our experience, what that means is it means that you get a better return on your investment. Now, out of the box, you get a set of cubes. So you've got finance, you've got inventory, sales and purchases and things like that. So you get off the ground running really quickly. And then also it helps you to be able to get that data out and be able to convert it and build your reporting much simpler than if you sat there as a developer trying to hard code it or hand code it. So really powerful analytics features, but there is a cost to that. There's a licensing cost, you need servers, there's infrastructure and things like that which you need to consider. But really great for being able to explore your data. Largely Excel based as a front end. So then we come on to some of the things which you've heard mentioned before, so Power BI. So Power BI is a Microsoft service, you pay a subscription, and that's per user, per month. But what I really liken it to is enriching your data. So now you're building something out of your spaghetti into a tower, and it's really exciting. So, you know, Excel, great. And here's a lovely Excel chart, Excel table, and everybody loves Excel and really flexible. But, you know, what's actually more visually compelling? What are you going to get more out of? Looking at that? Or is it looking at something like this? So this is where Power BI comes in, and you visualize your data and explore it. So this is something that Camden did in combination with Microsoft. It was looking at local data. So this happens to be trees and looking at where they are. But you can start cross-filtering. So if I click on sycamores in the middle, then all of the graphs and all of the charts and all of the data gets refreshed with that information. So really powerful, really visually compelling, and great for being able to explore your data. And the other thing, you can get it on any device now. So you can fire it up from a web browser, you can fire it up on your mobile phone, actually embed it within Business Central, within NAV as well. And the other great thing is it's constantly evolving. So every month, Microsoft are putting new features into that based on feedback. So new services, new connectors, new ways of exploring your data. So you can see here, this is a way to be able to look at your sales and actually do some forecasting off of the back end of that. And so think about where your sales are going to be and what's the variance potential within that. And as I said, it really is any device, anywhere. And because it's a subscription cost, it's really democratizing the availability of this reporting. So it's no longer kind of a, you know, you're going to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds to have a great BI suite. Actually, you can get that for £7.50 a month, I think, is the current subscription fee per user. But sometimes you want to move beyond that. So you've got your data in Business Central or in NAV, and that's brilliant. And you can do a load of cool stuff off of that. But maybe you've got your CRM data, maybe you've got some POD data. Let's say you create a Power App, like Bryony said, and it's your delivery Power App. And that's going into somewhere that isn't Business Central. Maybe you want to bring that in and you want to be able to analyze that in combination with your sales data. So you need to start thinking about not being bound by the data which you have. So you're not being held in by the spaghetti, which is the Business Central data. Actually, it's not spaghetti anymore. It's whatever you want it to be. And this is where Jett Analytics and Power BI are really powerful, because actually what they can do is take any of your data from pretty much anywhere and put it all together. Now, it's not quite as simple as just point it there, brilliant, I've got a lovely reporting suite. You know, there's work to be done behind that, but you can see here all the various connectors that Power BI has, for example. And these are changing monthly, so whether it is NAV, whether it's Business Central, whether it's Dynamics CRM, whether it's Salesforce, or whether it's just a SQL database or an Excel sheet, you can bring it all in and put it together. So fantastic. We've seen some of the options available, but what are the costs? And I think when people look at it, you probably think that these are probably your expected costs. So we'll start with Business Central, and a lot of these reports come with it, and that's great. So, you know, I've bought Business Central, I've got Nav, so I've got access to these reports, brilliant. Excel, yeah, that's a subscription to that, and maybe actually I'll get Jett reports, and then, oh, actually I want sort of to be able to explore my data, so Jett Analytics, well, that's quite costly. But I think what you need to start looking at is not so much about the cost, it's more about the benefit and perhaps the missed opportunity that you will have by not investing in this. So actually what I think happens is it equalises out a lot more, because through implementing something like Jett Analytics or looking at Power BI, you can actually start using that data in a much better way, and actually you don't spend so much time doing these reports across the business. So I see it as benefits and costs. So if you look at Business Central or Nav, what do you get with that? So, well, Business Central, free in some ways. It's directed, you know what you want to get. So you're running a report, I want top customers, so it's telling you what you want. It's familiar, your end users know where they've got to go, they're used to being able to use it. So one place to go and get that data. But actually, if you want a report built, there's a development cost. And there are probably some limitations around that. It's not very free form as such and flexible. It can be, but there's a cost to doing that. So what about when we move on to the next? So if we look at Jett reports, well, now you've got a license cost or a subscription cost. There's some training, but typically in our experience, we can give you 2 days training, and then your end users are quite self-sufficient and can get on and start building their own reports using any data within there. It's familiar, it's Excel, it's your Nav data, it's your Business Central data. If you're looking for customers, the table you're going to is customers. If you want their name, the field you want is their name. So it's quite easy to get to things. You can self-manage, as I said, with a bit of training. Then what you can do is you can take over that and you can actually self-manage this. So you can drive your own reports. You're not reliant on the boundaries of what's in Business Central. You're not reliant on T-Vision to then, you know, develop reports. We're there to help and assist and provide more training if need be, but it's about then, you know, reducing the overall cost because you've got flexibility then. And it is very flexible. So it's any Nav data and across databases, across companies, it understands Nav. So a lot of value from that. So why? And as I said before, it's Excel based. So then you look at Jett Analytics, and really the question from that is, what do you want to get out of it? So whereas I think with Business Central and Jett reports, it's very much about kind of looking into your data and saying, okay, well, I want this answer to something. With Jett Analytics and Power BI as well, I think it's much more about exploring your data and trying to get some information out and analyze it. So it's not just trying to get an answer to something, it's trying to say, well, what have I got here, and actually what conclusions can I draw? So if you go to Jett Analytics, yes, there's a licensing cost, there's a subscription cost. There's training, and it's a project, you know, it's not quite as simple as just turn it on. There is an implementation cost for us to deliver it to you, and a training need. You need servers, you need licenses for the SQL servers and things like that. But actually a lot of these things now can be rented. You know, you can put it in the public cloud through Azure or another service. But it's really flexible. So actually it comes pre-built with lots of cubes. It comes pre-built with some of these connectors. So you hit the ground running. You're not starting from scratch. And actually you can use any data. So it can connect to your Nav data and it understands that, or your Business Central data, it understands that. But it can connect to your CRM data, it can connect to a SQL database, an Excel file, whatever it needs to be. And you're starting to then look at large data sets. So it's not big data, we're not sort of talking about billions and billions of rows, so it can handle that. We're talking about your sales, your invoicing data off of, 3 years. And actually you want to compare this year to last year and see the variance. And then actually I want to be able to slice it by my product categories or by the resource which has been selling that, or the salesperson or the customer, and be able to explore it that way. And that's when it really comes into play, is exploring that data. So then next step is, well, Power BI. And I think Power BI is an interesting one. So, okay, it's a low subscription cost, £7.50 per user per month, okay? It's peanuts when you look at the overall cost of what something would have cost in the past to do what Power BI can do. Again, I think if you're going to look at doing it, there's a training need. It is a project. You know, there's a requirement for us to give you the tools and the ability to be able to do that. It's hosted, actually. You don't have to worry about infrastructure. Your £7.50 is paying for the service. You don't need a server. It's web access, so you don't need to install anything on your end users' machines. They just fire up a website and access it. It's very, very visual. And that's not just visual in terms of, okay, well, it's a pretty chart. It's really easy to explore the data and lots of ways to look at it, which mean you're not just looking at tables and numbers. You can see the difference visually, and that's really powerful, particularly, I think, with end users who kind of want to go into a meeting and just be able to get a quick snapshot of where their customer's at. Very flexible again. You can bring in any data, lots of connectors as we looked at. And again, you can start dealing with large data as well. So it's not just bound by, well, I want to look at this and I've got this bit of data. Again, you can start comparing years and time periods and cutting it and slicing and dicing it by whichever way you want. And where Power BI is interesting as well is actually you can connect it directly into your Business Central data and start using it and all the power that it has in terms of the capabilities of the way that it can analyze your data without having to have another server, without having to have Jett Analytics. So you can have the full stack, you can have Business Central and Nav, you can have Jett Reports, you can have Jett Analytics, and Jett Analytics actually comes with Jett Reports as part of the cost. And then you can put Power BI over the top. Or actually, you can have Business Central or Nav with Power BI. So cutting out that kind of middle layer. Okay, there are some limitations around that, but it's certainly a really powerful way to give you access to that data and perhaps use it, and actually at some point you'll grow and need more infrastructure to support that, but these are all there and powerful. So in summary, I think what I think it is data really is the new currency. You need to be thinking about how you're going to make use of that. What opportunity can you see or get, or actually what opportunity might you miss if you don't use that data? But to start that, you need to think about what you want to get out. So don't start with saying, well, let's just use it and brilliant. Think about what questions do you actually want to ask and answer. Is it your profitability? Is it understanding what territories, what areas in the country you're doing well at, what are your key cost drivers, etc. And then also decide who in your business is actually going to own it and how you're going to prepare that data. And that's actually 90% of the job, I think. But if you can answer those questions, then actually there's lots of tools available with Business Central all the way through Jett Analytics, Jett Reports into Power BI to actually unlock this potential within your data. Thank you very much.